Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of my Beginner Gardener series. Today we're going to be talking all about raised beds. This is my favorite way to garden because I love the look of raised beds and the accessibility of them. Raised bed gardening is when you grow in something other than a pot or in the ground. Usually raised beds are made out of wood or metal, but can also be made out of plastic depending on the type of garden that you get. Let me know in the comments below if you garden in a raised bed or plan to this year, and if you have any burning questions that you're looking to have answered. So raised beds made out of wood can be made out of anything, so you could use old plywood or cedar or anything like that. However, most people make them out of treated lumber or cedar because they last the longest. There is discussion on the internet that treated lumber could be dangerous for your raised bed. However, from what I've read online, it appears that they've changed the way that they treat lumber now so that it is a lot more safe. But this is my own personal research that I've done. So I highly recommend that you do your own research and decide if you feel comfortable with using treated lumber or not. And if you do want to build your raised garden out of wood and you don't feel comfortable using treated lumber, I highly recommend using cedar wood. The difference between cedar lumber and treated is not only the wood type, but that cedar is a lot more expensive. So you do have to budget for spending more if you do plan on building your own raised bed. So here are some benefits of using a raised garden bed. The first is that you can control the type of soil that you're putting in your garden as opposed to growing in the ground where you just have to use the soil that it comes with. When you're building a raised garden bed, you can put in any type of soil that you want, so you can use manure, compost, or any type of triple mix or garden blend, so that way you can start your plants off with the best nutrients available. The second is if you're building your own raised bed, you can choose any size or shape that you want, any height that you want. If you're building it yourself, you can make it to any shape that fits your backyard and how you like to use your yard. You have a lot of flexibility when you're doing it yourself. Another benefit of raised garden beds is that depending on the height that you build it, it's a lot more accessible, so it's easier on your back when you're gardening or harvesting, and it allows anyone with any physical abilities to be able to garden. And the last item is that raised garden beds are very aesthetically pleasing. They're just really nice to look at, and they make your yard look really nice. I'm a big fan of how they look and how they look when they're filled with different vegetables and flowers. So this is why it's my choice on using raised beds. So some considerations when you're looking at getting a raised bed is that depending on the material, they can be really expensive to make or to buy. If you're looking at metal raised beds, they can get really expensive if you wanted to make a larger garden. And of course, with the price of wood, it can be expensive depending on how much the wood is at that time that you're planning on building it. If you are building your own wooden raised bed, you do have to have the tools and the knowledge on how to build one. I will say that they're not very complicated to make, so if you do have the basic tools such as a saw and a drill and screws, you can easily build one yourself. So depending on how high your raised garden bed is, it can be expensive to fill. So if you do have a taller raised bed, I highly recommend filling the bottom of it with leaves and branches, so that way you have less soil that you need to buy to fill it, and those branches and leaves will break down feeding the soil. And finally, if your garden is made out of wood, it does have a lifespan. It doesn't usually last much longer than 10 years. So 10 years from now, you will have to look at rebuilding your garden. However, in my viewpoint, 10 years is a pretty long time, and so it makes it worth it for me. So if you do want to go the metal raised bed route, there are two companies in Canada that I do recommend. The first one is Sproutbox Gardens. They are a Canadian company, and what I like about them is that they have a lot of color choices and shape choices. I did do a review video on them, so I will link it in this video and in the notes below if you wanted to watch that. And the second recommendation is Raised Garden Beds Canada. What I like about them is that they are an affordable option. However, the shapes and sizes are limited. So it really just depends on if you are more concerned about your budget or the aesthetic of your garden. They'll each give you really quality gardens for whatever your needs are, whether it be budget or how they look. And that's everything about raised garden beds. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like it and subscribe for more in this beginner gardener series, and send this to anybody you know who's looking to have a raised bed or is planning to garden this year, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye.